righty, everybody. Welcome to No Fear, the podcast that explores the boundaries between courage and fear. I am Pete Pepe, one of the co-founders of 3777. And I have the great pleasure today to have with me the other two co-founders of 3777. I have Mr. Iiro. And across from me, I have Mr. Jeb Corliss. All right. So now today we're going to be talking about a little bit more of a serious subject. We're going to be talking about mental health. And what we want to kind of get into is basically we want to discuss how high-risk activities can actually work as a coping mechanism. So this is going to be interesting. I'm really excited for this, and I want to throw it over to Iiro.
Yeah, I've spent a lifetime of professionally jumping off buildings and antennas, and I've heard so many times that you are crazy. People are pointing finger at me. But for me, it always made sense. For me, like when I did something dangerous, it always made me feel calmer, and maybe like the whole world around me seemed to make more sense. But now, like with age and with therapy, I've started to learn that maybe all of them couldn't be wrong, and that maybe there's something in my behavior that could be look a little bit different. And that's what I want to talk today about mental well-being and how maybe that those issues have affected my life and my choices, both in good ways and bad ways. Like it's what we make out of it. And we're sitting with Jeb, who has also a very strong opinion about this thing. And now he's drank 2 Coca-Cola as a man who doesn't usually like have any caffeine. So like it's almost like I'm winding a Duracell bunny here and getting ready and like asking the first question for Jeb, and then there he's gonna go. So you want to do the first question today?
Yeah, Jeb. Let's discuss a little bit how your activity, shall we say, or base jumping, how did it actually help you? How did it serve to, shall we say, tame something or cure something within you that was an issue or a mental health issue that you had that was actually pretty serious?
Well, I guess I should talk a little bit about what that problem was. I mean, you can't talk about how you solve an issue until you kind of know what that issue is. So when I was young, I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's where I went to school from like 1st to 6th grade. And during that period, I went through extreme bullying, I guess is the best way to describe it. I was constantly bullied, constantly getting in fights. And for me, school was not a place to go to learn something. It was a place to go into combat. So I became very violent and very angry and very hostile. And also my father, I had issues with my dad, like a lot of people do. He was a bit of a drug addict, and that affected me psychologically as well. By the time I was 16, I suffered from severe depression, like suicidal depression. And at 16, I was going to kill myself. Like it was a guarantee. Like I wasn't going to make it. I was in a very dark place. I was very unhappy. I didn't have any desires, hopes, dreams. I didn't see a future. I didn't want a future. I'd wake up and be pissed off about it. And I was just filled with rage and anger. And worse than that is most of the time I felt nothing at all. I was a very kind of numb human being. I was kind of like a Walking Dead person, like a zombie. And one day, like in one of my darkest moments when it was really bad, I was watching television, just like flicking through channels, and all of a sudden I saw a documentary with a man standing on the edge of a cliff, and it instantly kind of captured my attention. And I saw the guy stick his tongue out, step off the cliff, open his arms, and start to fly. It was a base jumper doing a base jump. And it struck me like lightning. Like it was this bizarre sensation, a feeling went through my body that was electric, and the hair on my back stood on end, and I just became super activated. And it was very interesting, the profound like impact seeing that was. And I knew instantly that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Like whatever it took to make that happen was what I was going to do. And it's fascinating because it's weird because mental issues, like you don't really understand. Like now looking back, I see it from a completely different perspective. A lot has gone on since then. But at the time I was just suffering and I needed something to hang on to. And what base jumping did is it gave me something I actually wanted to do off in the distance. So I kind of think of being like trapped in a really dark tunnel where you can't see anything. And what base jumping became this little tiny light off in the distance that I could see. and it was like a direction to head. It gave me something to strive for, something to do. So how it benefited me was, obviously you don't just stop being depressed because you find something you want to do. It doesn't work like that. But what it would do is when I would reach these really dark, like deep, really unhappy moments when I was going to, like, kill myself, I was going to do it. And what would happen is, psychologically, I would kind of convince myself, well, anyone can shoot themselves. Anyone can hang themselves. If you're going to do it, make your death matter. Do something spectacular with your death. Don't just kill yourself. Go out there and do something that most people aren't willing to do. Right. So that's what base jumping became. It became something that every time I would get super depressed and get ready to do it, I'd be like, no, do it like that. So it helped me hang on during a very dark period of my life. And then what's strange about base jumping is that you can't just do something like that, especially as a 16-year-old. You have to learn to skydive. You have to get a certain amount of skydives under your belt before someone will actually take you and teach you, And by the time I finally got to that place where I was 21 years old before I did my first base jump. So it took 5 years for me to actually get there. And by the time I got there, I was no longer suicidal. I no longer wanted to die. So in a sense, base jumping really did save my life. But I guess what's more interesting is, I didn't realize this until very recently. About a couple years ago, I finished writing a book about my life, and I was going through the stories of everything I had done for the last 30 years. And what's really interesting is I never understood that I had a mental problem. I never looked at myself that way. I never saw myself as having a mental issue.
Because it all makes sense when you were.
Well, it's not even that it made sense. It's just, crazy people don't know they're crazy, and that's
right. And
I didn't realize I was crazy. And what was interesting is, as I was writing the book, I got through maybe like 6 stories. When you're writing a book, you're trying to explain to other people your motivations and why you're doing the things that you're doing. And as I was writing my stories, I couldn't understand it myself. Like, why was I doing that? Like, what was motivating me to make these decisions? And all of a sudden, by like the 5th, maybe 6th story, it dawned on me, oh, I'm insane. Like, I have a genuine psychological disorder that was never diagnosed. And what I was doing is I was using extreme experiences to cope with a mind that was trying to kill me. My own mind was trying to end me. And I was using these really powerful, horrifying, like fear-filled experiences to somehow deal with like these demons that were just shredding and ripping away at my mind. It was kind of like this, each time I did something that was truly, genuinely terrifying, it somehow created an exorcism that like would slaughter these demons ripping away at me.
Yeah. Well, I got a question. This is an interesting one, where it's when you spoke about your father having a drug or an addiction or a problem with drugs. It's really interesting, again, that you chose. And again, some people would look at it like we were talking about, oh, he chose a crazy route. But it's like, no, you chose not to use drugs, and you actually chose an activity that is a high risk activity, but you chose something that gave you purpose. It started to create an identity, but it was something that, again, is deemed like, oh, he's crazy because he's jumping off buildings. And we know the stories of other people who have confronted you and said, you're fucking nuts and all this stuff. But it's cool that you didn't go, like, shall we say, like the cliche route, like, I'm going to blow my brains out. I'm going to go to drugs. I'm going to turn to this. You chose a high risk activity. And I know, Iiro, you have a similar story, shall we say, where, like, just to lump you guys together for a second, because both stories are interesting.
Or similar.
Yeah. What got you, again, in this whole identity crisis and this whole mental issue and people thinking you're crazy? Like, where did your origins come from?
Well, it's all dates back to childhood. I think a lot of like the package that we'll carry along with us in life and how it affects us. It's all like based on things that happened to us. Most of it when we were kids. And then Jeb was bullied at school and with a lot of kids. But I had a very problematic relationship with my older brother. So I had to fight him and his friends almost every day. And it kind of planted the seed in my head that you're not worthy, and that's kind of you shit. If you could hear that every day in your life that you look like an idiot, you talk like an idiot. So you start kind of a feeling it. My parents were very loving, but unfortunately I got a lot of like bullying from my brother, and it really hit me long. Like I was also contemplating suicide when I was in my teens. And Jeb has always been very open about his kind of a suicidal thoughts, but kept coming from Finland. We're like a Finnish men. We don't talk about emotions too much. And like maybe we'll have a bottle of vodka and we'll tell something, and then it's never been mentioned again. So in that sense, it was kind of a hard to understand and talk and kind of get help for the problems. And for me, it's also like there was a light at the end of the tunnel was base jumping. It was something to look for because I wanted to revenge on my brother by becoming rich and famous. So that's what I thought. Like, okay, I'm a teenager now. I don't might have anything, but I'm just gonna prove the world wrong, and I'm going to be happy then when I'm rich and famous. And that was my goal. And that was the fuel for almost like teenage years. I wanted to become a famous magician. So like I did, like I practiced a lot, and I was performing all over. I got my own TV show. And finally I landed there. Like everyone in my small country knew me. And for Finnish standards, I was rich. So like I kind of realized, okay, now I landed, and am I happy? And I wasn't there. So I was like able to escape the feeling of emptiness and kind of I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And then the suicidal thoughts returned, and I was able to escape them for a couple of years, but with alcohol and partying. And then I kind of reached a point, a little bit like Jeb was, like I kind of, something radical is going to happen. But base jumping was a dream that I always thought it was too dangerous. I don't want to die. But then at situation, like if I'm in my 20s and I've got I thought that I knew everything that life have to offer from me. And then that kind of pulled me in a track of base jumping and all the dangerous activities. And then when we connected, it was quite interesting because we were both in a very dark place. Like, I mean, Jeb was almost like kind of a, how would I describe it? He was a little bit more experienced than I always was, and his dreams were a little bit crazier than mine. so when we were kind of hiking on a mountain, I was like, dude, we should come to California. There's this fucking gnarly, like, damn, we jump and there's bears at the bottom. And I was like, fucking scary, like it goosebumps when he was talking about it. And I was almost like stepping on thin ice, like, would I want, like, I really want to do that, but he's fucking scary. And I probably would, like, I got hurt, like we've been talking on the other podcast, every time I went to Jeff, I returned with a broken leg. So, but it was like important, like when it comes to mental. So, and we were doing crazy things, but it was normal for me. It was normal for you. And suddenly, like, I mean, our crazy world became normal because we found each other and we were able to share those crazy dreams and persuade them. So that was kind of like how we both come from our like troubled childhood into, and then like realizing base jumping, and then we can kind of continue the story, like how actually base jumping help us to find ourselves and help us to find the purpose. And suddenly the world that was horrible started to like show itself in a different light.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's phenomenal because to use something, or to use, again, high risk activities, whether it's shark diving, base jumping, wingsuiting, whatever label we put out there of the activity, it's pretty phenomenal that you guys were actually able to use that to heal yourself, or at least to find, not shall we say heal yourself, but to find a path.
Well,
that,
let me, it's a fascinating thing because, I did heal myself through base jumping, and it wasn't just base jumping, it was shark diving. It was basically, I always say extreme experience. I did a lot of extreme experiences all over the world, doing all kinds of really dangerous things that could kill me. And I got injured a lot. Like I got seriously destroyed many, many times. And I have more near-death experiences than I can even count, like literally. And I think that what's fascinating is that I went from this very suicidal teen who didn't want to exist, didn't want to live here, saw no purpose in life, no reason to breathe or eat or sleep or do anything. And then flash forward almost 20 plus years, and I have an accident where I have to make a decision. Do I want to die quick or do I want to die slow? And what was interesting is in that moment, I chose to die slow. I chose to try to survive and just see how much time I could get. And it was an interesting thing to choose life when, I could have just given up and it would have just been over, and I didn't. I decided, no, this life is worth living. I want to continue. I don't want to die. And it was a very profound moment for me when I realized that the only thing that mattered in life was time. Nothing else meant anything. And as long as you had time it gave you the possibility, basically endless possibilities of things that could happen. But the instant your time ends, that's it. There are no more possibilities. Death is the end for me, and that was when, it just showed me that I was, I don't know if you want to call it better, but I all of a sudden realized the importance of my life, and I wanted to live it, and I wanted to exist for as long as I possibly could so I could continue having these experiences and having all these possibilities. And that's what I try now. Like, when I wrote my book, it's when I kind of really, these things came, like, were hashed out, and I started understanding myself better and understanding the psychological struggles that I'd been going through for decades, and how all of a sudden I was such a happy person. Like right now, I mean, I don't, I used to identify myself as a base jumper. If somebody ever asked me, like, well, who are you? What are you? I'm like, I'm a base jumper, It's funny too, because like I surfed, but I wouldn't call myself a surfer. Right. I snowboarded. I didn't call myself a snowboarder. Hell, I did over 6,000 skydives. I never called myself a skydiver. I wasn't a skydiver. Right. I identified as a base jumper. That's like what I was. It was my identity. And then all of a sudden, very recently, this is just in the last year, I had someone ask me, what are you? And it was the first time since I was 16 years old that I didn't say I was a base jumper. It was the first time where I'm like, you know what? I'm nothing. I'm a human being having an experience, and I just love my life, and I love everything that's in it. And I don't really identify as any of these things anymore. I'm just here for the experience of life itself. Wow. And it was a very profound moment, because I did somehow get over that hump of depression and sadness. And now I wake up in the morning and I'm happy. Every day that I can get out of bed and go to the bathroom by myself without help, I'm happy. Any day I wake up and I'm not in excruciating pain, I'm happy. Any day I'm not in a prison cell, I'm happy. Right. It's strange just to be awake and alive and conscious and seeing the world and all the incredible things that are happening. Are they just make me happy, and I'm just enjoy.
Yeah, I remember when that change happened to you, because we've been talking about dying so openly, and we've been laughing about it. Oh, which one is going to be for?
Oh, we're in competition. Who's going to die first?
Yeah, and it was friendly competition, but we took it very seriously.
But I always thought, if I recall, that you own his soul.
No, other way around.
It's changed.
No, it's always been.
Oh, yeah, because Jeb always, when I met him, like, he's always dressed dark, and for like 2 first years I thought he was like a devil's worshipper, and then it took me like, oh, he's just joking about it. So, but it took a little while. But going back to the story, like, I mean, I remember, because we were joking so much about the death, and we were willing to face it. And every day, like, we woke up and almost realizing that today is a good day to die. But then I had already got injured, and I had stopped jumping, and I found other interests in life, and continued to find passions and that fuel and give me a purpose. But I think there was an interesting change that happened in you. I think you were living in Marina del Rey at the time, and I talked to your mother, and I think she had asked, like, if you, because there's a good chance besides dying that we might get paralyzed and we might be in a vegetative state. So she had asked Jeb, like, I mean, if you're getting this injury and then you're like a vegetable at home, like, how long, like, what should I do? And usually Jeb would say, like, save the planet, pull the plug. Let's save, like, let's save that to a light bulb, and let's not have it on my machine. But you had told your mom that at least a year, like, I think, like, there has to be a chance. So I think that was like, wow, like, I mean, like, that was whole, like, your perspective had changed, and you really started, and I could see in you, like, I mean, it happened when you were the most hardcore in the base jumping. Then it was like a destructive phase, but that kind of a change and the growth and maturing that I've seen, and I contribute a lot to these extreme activities that you've been everything on it. But I remember there was just a certain period, like a switch that had happened in your head, that it was interesting to learn.
Well, it was Table Mountain. It's interesting. We're gonna talk about this at a different time, but I had an experience that occurred when I was 35, and I had a terminal accident, like an unsurvivable accident. Like, if you had told me before the accident that you could survive what I survived, I wouldn't believe that it was possible. Like, it was a guaranteed death. And I was laying in the hospital after it, and I remembered laying there staring at the ceiling, and it was strange what happened, because I spent 6 weeks kind of by myself in a room alone. Iiro was there for like the first week or two, but he had to leave, and eventually I was alone. and no one came to visit me. I was by myself, and all I had was my thoughts, and I couldn't move. I was literally crippled in a way that I couldn't even roll on my side because my leg was open and I had skin grafting, and it was brutal. It was really bad. But a really bizarre thought entered my mind. At that stage, I was a very childish person. My mind worked in a very childish way. And I had lived my life as if I was going to die that day. I treated every day as if it was my last day. I never thought more than 2 weeks in advance. There was what I was doing right now and what I was going to be doing in 2 weeks from now. That's it. That's all there was. I didn't look in the past. I didn't look beyond 2 weeks. The thought of living past 30 was impossible. Like, there's no way I'm making it past 30. I'm going to die before that period, the end. I just accepted it. Here I am. I've just had an accident that is unsurvivable that I survived. I'm 35 years old. And a thought that had never entered my mind all of a sudden came to me. And it's like, well, if that didn't kill me, what happens if I live to be 40? And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. What if I make it to 50? And then all of a sudden this creeping fear started crawling down my back. I'm like, what if I make it to 60? And I was like, it had never dawned on me that was even a remote possibility. Like, it never had entered my mind. And all of a sudden I realized I wasn't scared to die. I was never afraid to die. I had accepted death my entire life. I knew I was going to die, but I had never thought about what it would mean to live. And all of a sudden I realized, holy shit, I'm terrified of life. I'm actually terrified of living. And I realized that I had been living a very an unsustainable existence where death was the only outcome. There is no other outcome than death. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, if I make it to 50, like, I didn't have any regrets. Like, the way I look back on my life, I'm like, I was good with every decision I made. And I was happy with the human that I was. But I started projecting forward. And I'm like, okay, let's say I make it to 50, right? How much longer can I earn a living like this? Not much. You know, I could, a year, 2 years? I didn't even know I could be crippled. I may never be able to jump and make money again. So I'm like, what am I skilled to do? I mean, I've literally spent my life training to jump off buildings and cliffs. That's not a skill that translates, right? It's not like there's some other job I'm going to get with that, right? So I'm like, I've been just burning all my resources. The way I looked at it is, if I died with even 1 penny in the bank, then I'd failed at life, you know, which is a very childish way of thinking, you know? And I'm like, if I'm 50 and I'm working at Walmart as a greeter, you know, like signing tags and stuff, I'm going to be really pissed off that I had just thrown all my resources away. And I'm like, I need to absolutely fundamentally change my root programming. I need to start saving. I need to start investing. I need to start planning for the eventuality that I might not die. And I had never thought about it. And it was this, it sounds almost stupid. Like, as I'm saying it, it's like, this is the dumbest shit everyone thinks.
Well, it's a second dumbest thing. Dumbest thing is what I did. I had saved a retirement plan, and I thought I'd gonna die at 27. So I cast my retirement plan and fucking wasted it. So that is the dumbest thing you could do.
But I have to say, again, if we're swinging back to our subject of mental well-being, the fact that both of you were able to use something, again, that is such a risky activity, and you guys were able to kind of recalibrate your mind in a specific way that saved you, which I think is phenomenal. I mean, I know I want to go down another road, but before we get into that, I want to ask you a question. You've told us, as we were all hanging out, since we haven't been together in person for 6 years, you told us a funny story that we were getting a laugh out of, about someone else or other people commenting again on your well-being or your mental state.
I've been getting called crazy for a long time, yeah.
Okay, could you expand on that? Because it's interesting, again, to hear certain people, which is funny when other people have to speak up and label other people and say, you're crazy, and they're saying, Iiro's crazy, you're crazy. And it's like, okay.
Well, you know, it's fascinating. I've been called crazy forever because I am, you know. But at that time, I didn't really think I was. But now looking back, it's like they were calling me crazy because it's just a very accurate description of the shit that I was doing. But one day, I was in Malibu, and I was surfing, and I was out in the lineup, and I was younger, in my early 20s, and I'd just kind of gotten into base jumping. I just started making money doing it. And you know, you're out in the lineup and you bump into people and you start talking to people in between sets. And this guy starts talking to me and he tells me how he's like, you know, computer, like he's in the computer business doing like programming and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, whatever. And he's like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a base jumper. And he's like, what's that? He'd never even heard of it. He didn't know what it was. And I'm like, okay. So I start giving him a little explanation of, what I do, what base jumping is. And his response kind of shocked me a little bit. It was very surprising. And he's like, well, so in other words, you're a crazy person. And I'm like, well, I mean, maybe, I don't know. He's like, I don't respect crazy people. And I was like, what? Like, it was like just a weird like thing to have. I mean, he's a surfer. You wouldn't expect a surfer to say something like that to someone, because you'd think they kind of get it. They're surfing, so they should have a somewhat understanding. So I'm like, huh, okay, that's an interesting thing to say. I'm like, you want to know what I think is crazy? And he's like, yeah, I would love to know what a crazy person thinks is crazy. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you what. I think waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, eating some breakfast, getting in your car and driving for an hour on your way to a job where you then sit in a box for 8 hours. You maybe get a 30-minute lunch break, and then you get back in your car. You drive home in traffic again for another hour. You eat some dinner, you watch some TV, you go to sleep. You then repeat that process 5 days a week for, 60 years. And then you retire and then you die. And I think that is absolutely fucking insane. And he's like, touche. And it's funny because I'm going to say this, we talk about mental illness and it's becoming a very big topic, and it seems to be something that's impacting most people. And I will say that in my life, of the people who I've gotten to know, I have not met a single person who does not have some type of mental struggle. I've never met someone. And now I've seen people who are very good at covering it up and hiding it, but everyone who I've actually gotten to really know them, you actually start really talking to them. And then, I'm very open with my mental like struggles. And it seems like when you're open with people, they become more open with you. And I've noticed that everyone I've ever met has something going on. Yeah. Like it's I think consciousness is very challenging. It's very heavy. It's very difficult, and life is hard for everybody, and none of us has it figured out, and we're all doing the best that we can, and we're all trying to somehow survive, and that's what life is. You're in a constant struggle against gravity. Gravity is trying to pull you into the ground and freaking crush you. That's just all it is, and eventually it will, and we all know that. We're all very well aware of where we're going, and it's terrifying.
Well, look, since you've gone down that road, and we're going to go a little deeper into that if Iiro will allow us. Look, I just want to get a little bit more. I know for some people, I mean, even for myself, like asking for help, as we've been kind of molded into these men or individuals where we got it all figured out and we don't need help from fucking anybody and blah, 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 because I don't like to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And I know all of us have a certain perception, and of course we're extremely close, but I know it's important to put it out there, I think, for people that even like the toughest of people that can do such extreme high risk things have to ask for help. And I know you, of course, are a brother to me, both of you. And I always look to you as like the rock. And I'm always like, oh, if I did have a problem, I would call Iiro, because Iiro, he's the guy that will come over and he'll bail us out, or he would do this and that. And I know that you've gone down a dark path and you've had to, actually get over a fear, and you might not have had a fear of it, but have had to ask for help and to deal with some serious issues that,
Yeah, I think it's important. I think like before going to that, I think it's like important to like a little bit maybe define crazy. Here we go telling that we are crazy persons and like, we haven't been like officially like diagnosed as crazy people. Like there's also crazy actions. So what we do is for many people, it's very crazy. But like we talked before, for us to make sense and more than maybe curing, I think it was about coping. So like, I mean, we try to find a purpose in this world and our place in it. So, and that kind of a base jumping and risk like fit like a glove. And I don't think it did definitely help me with my suicidal thoughts. But then obviously, like we all have, like Jeb was saying, we all have like mental struggles. So it doesn't mean that like we're batshit crazy and put poop on our face and run around naked.
There's definitely levels of crazy.
So there is definitely levels that we talk about, and then there's different craziness. So mine is kind of going in back to the childhood, and I didn't know that I had mental problems. Like but a lot of the things like the behavior that I had created for myself in my childhood, which was a defense mechanism from them. And like, if you get bullied enough and you get like physically attacked, like you want to fight back. So rather than allowing a certain situation last for long, I learned very young age. So you react like aggression with, or like bullying with aggression and violence, and it became my like reaction to many things. So I didn't know that the kind of what I'm talking about, my crazy was, there was a lot of the problems that my self-esteem was hit very low when I was younger. So I had to constantly like create an ego and overperform and overachieve to feel good about myself, and that came back to like Chep and having like a status. So like, I mean, I saw like, okay, I'm not me, but I was a famous magician and that was my identity. And then base jumper, that became my identity. So I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I just wanted to be something else. I wanted to hold that title because that title brought me, I guess, respect that I was craving, because I had such a bad self-esteem when I was younger. But then life kind of, we can fast forward a little bit. So I tried therapy, but I didn't really find it. It didn't really fit. Those were not the right therapist. And I said, therapy doesn't work. It's not for me. And I don't have a problem. I have a large network of friends. So my therapy has been that I got around with my friends and we had a few beers and I opened my heart and they listen, and then I got a big weight off my shoulders. So I've always had a support network. But then in 2017, I was living in Cape Town, and we encountered a horrible tragedy. Like my family were victims of a murders, and that really hit hard for all of us, and especially my wife, who lost her twins, and I could see the change, like, or the importance of therapy. Like, she took it very seriously, and she got really help, and it's an issue that she constantly have to work with, and I was her rock also in that situation. So I didn't, like, I thought I was just a man, like therapy is for like sissies, like I'm a strong man, like I'm just like hold my ground, and I just gonna box these like negative feelings, and I'm not gonna talk to them, I'm not gonna react to them. You can't see that I'm sad, but you can't really box emotions. Like, every time you go through these griefs and anger and all these issues, if you don't deal with them, if you don't process them, they're gonna be somewhere locked inside of you, and then it's gonna burst out. There's gonna be some triggers, and they're gonna be bursting out. So that's kind of where I was. I was like, I didn't go to the therapy. I've noticed that my family was like back on their feet, and they were getting more stable and continued life. And then I could like kind of feel that I was like mental well-being was cracking. Like, I was super depressed. It was hard to get out of the bed. I got like super angry and like got on like aggressive on situations, and it was like the triggers that kind of brought that out were not healthy. And then I realized that I had to do something about it. And I'm really glad I did, because then I found a good therapist, and I was able to talk about like these issues. And she brought these sides of me that I hadn't known, like kind of things that I had repeated unwillingly, and then that haven't been healthy and haven't been constructive in my life, but they've had become part of my personality. But then kind of learning to, you never fix yourself. It's like basically you learn to understand yourself, and you learn to kind of like understand your not faults, but the differences, and you learn to live with them. And once you kind of start recognizing these patterns, you don't repeat them as well. And then I got a lot of tools that helped me from the therapy and from meditation and just a different perspective. Like, I mean, once you build a good relationship with the therapist, like they get to know you, so you might be able to lie yourself in certain things, but having that kind of a truth meter in front of you was very helpful. So I became like, I always, like, for decades I thought like the therapy is for sissies, and like, you know, if you like, if you go to talk to a therapist, you're fucking crazy. Kind of like Soprano. Tony Soprano had to hide it. Like, I'm not gonna, don't tell anyone I go to therapy. But now, like, you know, part of the courage is that like we open, first is the courage that you can ask for help, and then another thing is like, I think that because it's been such a positive experience for me, I want to encourage other people to, and I never talk about my own mental well-being or problems in any way in the media. So it's kind of something that I hold close to my chest, but I'm hoping that if we can be open about these issues, we can hopefully help other people who are struggling the same. And it's important to have like whatever tragedy or trauma you go to, it's important to have a support network, and it's to have the friends, and it's able to talk. But it's also important that you got some kind of a guidance or like reference from a real professional therapist, and that's why I became such a strong advocate for therapy.
Yeah, look, I love it. I think it's amazing. I really appreciate that you sharing that with us, because I know sometimes that's just not easy you don't always want your, personal things, spread throughout the internet and everything. So, thanks
No, I
for,
think
for
it's
telling that.
important. It's something that also that I'm able to talk about this issue shows that I've moved forward.
Yeah.
So in these issues, if they're current and if they're on, I wouldn't feel comfortable. But I think I now have the strength and the courage to hope that my example will help some of the listeners
Yeah.
to seek for help and then therefore improve their quality of life.
Excellent. Look, I have an interesting question for you now. I know that the extreme sports helped you originally deal with an issue with again a coping mechanism. Did you ever feel that when you were going through what you had gone through, but the fact that you were injured and you weren't able to do your sport, did you ever sit there and go, shit, I wish I had my sport where I could unleash that, and because it had helped me in the past, and were you missing that just as a
Yeah, but that's a good question because when I got injured and I couldn't jump anymore, it did feel like I was like a bird whose wings have been cut away. So just because I was having that identity
yeah,
of a base jumper. I think
yeah,
like if I couldn't jump, I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't get the respect. I wouldn't have the stories. So half of it like was base jumping was for me that I actually improved. But yeah, having a big ego and growing up like when feeling like worthless, and then I'm actually doing cool things. So part of it was also that I wanted to be cool and I wanted to show my videos and yeah, in that honesty. But yeah, that
but
was.
it's really, I mean, again, it's really interesting to see your both of you and your progressions of how you again use this high risk activity, but then the fact that you had to cope with like almost cope with it another way where you're like, shit, I don't have my high
Because it got
risk
taken
activity.
away.
It's taken away from me.
Yeah.
So you had to then mold this identity again where you're like striving to
And
almost find out who you are.
And it took a long time. It took a long time from the years of self-medication, like figuring out like what is important, like what can you do after you do such a high intense sport where you're willing to die for something. What is as intense that you can do that you could replace it? That I couldn't find it anywhere. But then I kind of like had to rewind my brain. Like what was it that was important for me in base jumping? Was it the jump? Was it those 5 seconds, 3 seconds, or 10 seconds that made it so special, or was it everything else? Was it the community? Was it the friends that you share those experiences? And it was like most of it was you travel some exotic location, you make an effort to go somewhere, and then you have a strong memory tied in that place. So that I realized like that was the thing that I missed. It was the lifestyle, it was the friends, it was the shared experience that for me in the end that was the sport, what everything meant. So then I kind of found a passion in photography, and that gave me an excuse to continue travel and go to these exotic places and make an effort and climbing up a mountain and taking the perfect shot from there and waking up early and getting the perfect light. So it doesn't replace base jumping,
Yeah.
but it replaces like a part of it. So and then it took me years to come in terms of the fact that I wasn't physically able to perform as the way my mind was still wanting to do it. So it took a long time to find peace with it. And I'm sure that also like I didn't have a therapist, so I didn't get to talk. So I'm sure that kind of all anger bottled in that sense, like frustration and maybe a little bit of bitterness, until I learned that because of I couldn't base jump, it probably saved my life down the line. So that was kind of a feeling. But yeah, once your identity is taken away from you, it took a while to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do.
Look, it's also fascinating. I love you guys and I love hearing these stories. I just want to just slightly dip into. I just got a spur of the moment question. I'm curious again when we talk about like again people trying to cope with mental illness, and a lot of people turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs, they go down a disastrous road. And again, both of you chose this sport. Was there something euphoric, or was there something within the sport, the physical act of the sport, that also like helped you guys cope, that gave you a certain feeling that you strove to get every time? You know what I mean? That helped like keep you calm or made you feel good, where you're like, again, like someone doing a hit like a drug, you guys were doing something that was not a drug oriented, and you were doing something that was, shall we say, more natural. But was there some kind of high or some kind of feeling that you guys got from it that helped?
Well, you want me to answer this?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Base jumping is an interesting experience. So they're not all the same. So if you do a jump that you deem as either safe or something that you have or something you've done many times, you don't get much of a feeling other than you're doing something. Every now and then you'll do a special jump, one that is on the very edge of your abilities, one that is very dangerous, and you can't fake it. Like there's no pretending it. You know it. Like you're standing on the edge, and you know for a fact that if you make a mistake in the next few seconds, you will die. Like it's not a question. It's not, you're not going to get hurt. It's not going to be a broken leg. It's going to be death. And when you consciously make a decision to do something like that, something very special happens to you. It's hard to explain, but when a person chooses to do something that can end their life, and they know that they must do a set of things correctly, and if they make even the slightest error, it's over. Your body goes into a very special place. So the best way to describe it is there's cultures, some call it the now, some call it flow state, some call it, time distortion. There's a thing that occurs as you make the decision to take that step over the edge. So the best way to describe these really intense jumps that are really super dangerous with incredibly small margins for error, where death is the outcome for a mistake, you enter true terror. Fear is not even the right word to describe it. It's so scary and so horrifying that your core being, your very nervous system, your DNA, your every nerve ending is screaming at top volume, don't do this. It's everything in your being is trying to prevent this from happening. It's fear is been bred into us over, all the billions of years of evolution to protect us. So what happens is these alarms start going off that are just trying to prevent this from happening. So in order to push through that, it takes enormous amounts of training and takes enormous amounts of will, right? So you're standing at the exit, and all of a sudden, this sensation is trying to stop you. And the best way I can describe it is like a hurricane raging inside your head. And every nerve ending is screaming, don't do this. And somehow you push through that moment and you actually do step over the edge. And what's fascinating is as you do that, it's like almost that sense, that part of you that's communicating with you, trying to stop you, is like, oh, you dumb motherfucker. I told you not to do this. Like, what the? And so all of a sudden it's like, all right, let's see if we can keep you alive. And all of a sudden, everything you have gets released. All adrenaline, all endorphins, all everything. Because what's happening is it realizes, okay, I didn't stop him. He's done it. Now we need to give him everything we can to survive. And all of a sudden, you become so connected to the reality in which you exist that your sight becomes heightened. Your smell, your taste, your touch. You can feel air touching your skin. I've done jumps in pitch blackness, new moons, total darkness, where I can see nothing. Like before I step off, I see literally blackness. I'm jumping into just the abyss. And as I step off, I can see. All of a sudden, I can see the ground. I can see guy wires. I can see everything around me. And what's even more strange is that time distorts and what seconds stretch into what seem like minutes. And everything is moving in ultra slow motion. And the sensation is so powerful that it's really kind of hard to explain to a person who hasn't experienced it. It's like explaining love to a person who has never experienced love. You just can't do it. Right. A person has to experience it to truly understand it. But what I can say is that after a jump like that, if you land uninjured, because injuries change the experience, but if for some reason you land and everything goes well, I've had moments where I'm on the ground just shaking, my whole body's vibrating, and I can hear insects crawling in the grass, and I can see in pitch blackness, and I can taste the air, and I can feel it touching my skin. And the feeling is so powerful that I feel like I am the most connected to the universe in which I live, period. There is nothing I've ever experienced that comes even close. Not even close. And like, for instance, the Zen, and they're trying the now, like they want to get into this moment we're in this exact second, and they'll spend 60 years in some temple on top of some mountain just trying to like focus on what's going on. And what's interesting is a really scary, real base jump that involves real consequences of death cheats you there instantly. There is no yesterday. There is no tomorrow. All that matters is what's happening in this exact moment. And it actually forces you into what's now. And that place of being completely connected is so powerful that it's hard to describe. And you'll hear people try to, well, you're just a heroin addict. You're just getting your rush. You're just an adrenaline junkie. And it's like, no, it's the exact opposite of using drugs. And to me, now this is my own personal thing. I think a person who's, let's say, injecting heroin, right? I think their purpose of injecting is trying to escape from pain, whether it's emotional or physical. They're trying to escape from, they don't like the reality in which they're in, so they're trying to alter it. They're trying to do something to disconnect from it. Whereas what a base jumper or a person doing a high-risk activity that can potentially kill them is the exact opposite. That's a person trying to connect to the reality in which they live. Their purpose is to feel everything at its absolute optimum level. And that's why when I hear people say, oh, you're just an adrenaline junkie, it's like, you do not know what you're talking about, because it is the exact opposite of what you're suggesting. At least that's what I get from it. And for me, I genuinely think that's the entire point of life, is to try to experience the reality in which you exist. That's why you've developed senses: sight, smell, taste, hearing, touch, few others that we don't fully understand. The entire point of having those senses and developing them over billions of years, evolving them, is to connect to the reality that exists outside of yourself. And when you do high risk, stressful, scary things, it heightens those senses, so you connect in a much more powerful way. So for me, that's what base jumping is. So do you have a powerful feeling while doing it? Yes. You have an incredibly powerful feeling of connecting to reality, connecting to the universe, connecting to the moment, existing in the now. And you're risking everything. And what's funny is you cannot fake it. There is no pretending it. You can't put on VR goggles and experience it. You literally have to, and you can't fake your brain that, oh, this is super dangerous, but you're really playing chess. No, it doesn't work like that. Your brain knows. Your body knows. Your cells know if what you're doing is dangerous or not. It knows what the consequences are. And that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah, after that answer, I have to go out of my retirement.
Would you like to answer?
I want to jump again.
Well, look, that was fucking amazing. And I love hearing that. And I think listeners and viewers are going to love hearing that. So I think we've learned a few things today. And I guess one of them is that, monks are probably going to start base jumping.
Yeah, well
it's a lot easier.
Yeah, but we don't want to really advertise base jumping. It's done great for us, but it's also killed like 50 of our friends. So it's a hefty price that we would do for them.
This kind of experience is not for everybody. I would never suggest you base jump. That's not something I would ever. I'm not a proponent of base jumping as a healthy, safe lifestyle. I just told you that you have to almost die. Right, that's not a healthy thing to do, and I would never suggest anyone get into the sport. The only person who should be in this sport is someone who would die without it. That's the only way I look at it. If this sport isn't going to save your life, don't do it. And if you can find happiness in your life doing anything else, do anything else. But I think that
Well, look, I think again, it's at the core of it all is like, look, find a passion, and usually when you're passionate about something, if you're that driven and passionate about it, it usually will help you through life, and it definitely can help
Yeah, well, for us, like, I mean, I want to kind of end this episode because note, like, we found base jumping. It helped us to recuperate and cope with the problems that we had, and Chip's writing process helped him to understand these problems before. For me, it was therapy. For how I was able to cope with these issues before going to the therapy was having a large group of friends, having always friends that I knew that I could call, I could talk about my problems. So also for all the listeners, I hope you can follow example, not to jump off the building, but to share your problems and talk to them with your friends, and realizing that you're not alone, and that therapy helps. And it's good to get these things off your chest, so you don't have to go in the same dark places where we've been to, and you don't have to jump off a building to find happiness and balance in life.
Get seriously injured.
And get seriously injured and potentially die. So it's nice to be alive, nice to be happy, and having gone through that journey. But yeah, I think it's important, like especially for men, to ask for help. And so it's important that we're there for each other, and we look ways to improve our well-being.
Yeah.
So.
Well, look, I just want to thank both of you. I mean, it's always an amazing time hanging with you. I appreciate both of you opening up to everybody. And I just want to remind of all our viewers and listeners, please subscribe to the 3777 channel, and also go to 3777.com and check out our exclusive merch. And we appreciate everybody, and thank you for listening and watching.